Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for being
Yeah,
here. And thank you to Soka University of America. It is with the greatest pleasure that I introduce you to my colleague and my new friend, artist and educator, Arie A. With the ability to slice through any trial or tribulation with humor, like a hot knife through butter, Arie has passed through and transcended the most horrific and painful experiences life can deliver. Through his lifetime of action, making art, he's emerged from pain to plunge himself with stalwart deliberation into the utter joys of life and living. The creative process and resulting objects cannot replace human life, but they possess and invite imaginative empathy in audiences who see and experience his work. With expert craftsmanship, depth of content, and utter generosity, Gala's paintings and drawings transform those who are fortunate enough to see them. Arie has exhibited his work both nationally and internationally and has made life-changing impact on too numerous to count. Join me in welcoming Arie A.
thank you very much for your kind introduction. And I would also like to add to Anne, welcome to our community. Anne herself is a fantastically talented artist and a caring and dedicated teacher. And I'm glad to have her here with us on campus.
Thank you.
Uh, this lecture deals with a certain progression of my dealing with landscapes, but at the same time, I feel is that a human being is almost, I guess, the best way to compare to it is a snail, that we never leave the larval state, no matter how big the shell gets as the snail keeps growing. It's always there. The same with us. Wherever we started our lives, whatever we went through, it's always there, whichever way you think you're changing your work and so on. I try to look at the world without hatred. I try to look at the world showing its beauty. I try not to deal with hatred toward others, but focusing only on the people who have done good. So I'm gonna take you on a journey of about 60 years. When I was a kid in Poland at about 3 years old, my father was a tailor, and the floors there are sort of a burgundy or maroon color. And I used to take the tailor chalks and draw trains after train on every board because I could see that outside the window. It was a beautiful little town in southwest Poland called Lubawka. And that through other things. I finished my 8 years of grammar school in 3 different countries in 5 different schools, my being always the youngest but the newest person in that particular class. And as such, I had to discover that, especially in a way that other kids would challenge you and so on, that my ability to make art won friends almost instantly. So here, I would like to lead you through a certain aspect of my evolution as an artist, especially dealing with landscapes. And I will take my time. Also, I'd like you to know that some of the images I'm going to run through very fast, but at the end, you'll see the my website that you can actually come at your own leisure and look at it. So without further ado, let us start the lecture. This is a drawing, a painting.
Arie,
Yes,
I've forgotten one thing.
yes.
Audience, please reserve your questions until the very end. And Aria, you need to share your screen.
Okay,
Okay, yeah.
okay. I thought I did that. Okay, excuse me. First time users. Okay, 1 second. Share screen, right? I click that, share screen, and then go this way. Okay, do you see it? Do you see it?
Not yet.
How about now? Can you see it?
Not yet. Not yet. Hit escape for a moment.
Hmm.
Okay. Do you see your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. There we are. You're ready.
Okay, now I can see, now I can just start the lecture, right?
Go to full screen. Ah, that perfect. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I always believed that Murphy was a very wise Irishman. No matter how well you prepare, something happens. Thank you very much for putting up with this for a second. This is an image I did. I was about 14 years old. We were asked to do something in high school to show spring and so forth. I think there were other three artists, student artists and me. And that's sort of a memory from my, it's a little town in Poland, you know, with the you know, pussy willows, et cetera, et cetera. It's sort of a beautiful pastoral scene that I had in mind. And the next one, that was from the Art Institute of Chicago. We also had an assignment. And the title of the assignment, the topic was Spring. And unfortunately, this is what I was able to do for this particular assignment, simply because that somehow spring hit me, because what we lived through in Poland, what we survived. I was born in the last year of the war, although we were refugees in Uzbekistan, is that this something sticks with me. And this kind of a theme keeps recurring no matter how I dealt with my image in the future, that always sort of stayed in the background. Again, this is the same kind of time period. And you notice that my name is Leonard on the bottom, on the signature. My aunt refused to call me Arie A. She says, it's not American. So she named me Leonard, which means lion and so on. Never took it. People like Leonard Nimoy are wonderful having named Leonard. My name happens to be Arie A. And this is some more of those same imagery. Here I am in America, enjoying everything else in high school, and this is still haunting me. Now, this is something that I did from a biology teacher. This is just a big project for a 7-foot painting I did for the biology room. And then I thought I was going to become a Chicago artist. And this is, again, I'm probably a junior in high school. And I went around, there's the lions in front of the Art Institute, some monuments in Chicago. This I kind of like. That's a backside of the apartment building where we lived. This is a unique landscape. This woman, Mrs. Weiss, asked me to make a landscape for her, and she loved Japanese art. So I had absolutely no idea what it is, but I looked through a lot of pictures, and I sort of made up a compilation of some of them and modified it. And something more about this a little bit later. This painting here is, I actually got up very early in the morning to paint a few blocks away from my house. That beautiful shining river is actually a canal in Chicago, and it's a pretty dirty and muddy water. But I thought the Midwestern sun going up on the flatlands and lighting up caught my fancy. And again, I went on into memory. This is how I felt in the cliffs of the Mediterranean Sea in Israel, when we had something called the kumzit, which means you come down and you throw potatoes in the fire, not wrapped in aluminum foil, and then you eat them with total delight, including the ashes and wood chips and whatever else was imagined. But I like pen and I like ink, and I was drawing with that. This is another one, as you notice, still Leonard. This is a memory piece, the little house that we had in Israel, in Netanya. And I remember painting that sign over the door, which means tailor, because my father was an excellent tailor. And slowly I started painting a little bit more pastoral paintings. This is one of the things I did in high school too. It's still L. Leonard. This is one of my favorite paintings, not because it's such great artwork or anything else, or something similar to that. But if you notice on top of the line here, you see that little line here like that? That's because I didn't have enough canvas for the particular frame that I had. And my father sewed 2 pieces of canvas together, a little canvas strip. so I could stretch the canvas on it. And every time I look at this, I see my father's workmanship in it. I see that that was just one of those wonderful dedications to a son, to be able to do it. And I treasure this painting. I saw this person doing something in the Chicago Canal. I have no idea what he was doing, but it struck me in the middle of winter, this darkness and so on. I don't know what he was looking in there. This is an environ. Now, the reason I didn't call it landscape, but environs, because I actually went through different landscapes, but I also lived in different environments. And as such, this is something, you know, taking the bus to in Chicago, taking the bus from place to place. And again, as I wanted to be a Chicago artist, this is the back alley, my house on Ainsley and Sawyer. The next couple of them is my favorite sport. I played it. I was okay, I guess. It was good, not great, but I loved soccer, and most of my paintings dealt at that point, the whole period of soccer stadiums and soccer games. I like this one because I painted it with spools after my father's thread. I would cut the edges of the spools and made a little roller with wire hangers and dip the rollers in paint and then roll it on the canvas. So I don't know why I tried it, but it gave me this sort of a abstraction kind of a look. My father had cancer and he was down in the Sidney Hillman station in South Chicago. And I used to wait at this bus stop to take one of the buses to get down there from where we live. And I took sketches and so on. And I was totally fascinated by the amazing Midwestern sunsets and the kind of a peacefulness light that it put in there. It's kind of clumsy, I would say, as far as art is concerned, but it's really, I was really into this urban aspects of trying to show the beauty of what happens in Chicago. And this is actually sort of a, I guess it was sort of growing out of loneliness. It got damaged someplace in the rain. It was a kind of a loneliness. It's supposed to be me in front looking as there's a couple there at the L station on Belmont Station. This is done with pen, India ink, and pen. And I guess I'm one of the few people that can count a million rice. So this is actually painted, probably there are a million dots on it. And I used to work in Michigan in a summer camp, and I had this M1 magazines belt where from the Marines I got in that surplus store, and I would, instead of putting magazines of bullets, I would put paints in there like that, and that's how I would go into the fields, having looking like some kind of a bandito or whatever, with paint sticking out, you know, and crossing my chest. And some more sketches, pencil. I always vacillate between black and white and color. And this is already in Brooklyn when I started going to Tyler School of Art, the neighborhood, and learning how to do etchings in my first etching. This is another thing that if you remember before, you saw that scene with the door, and this is coming back to that. It was a seminal painting for me. It's an environment, it's a landscape, it's maybe crucifixion. And you notice on the bottom right, it says Arbeit macht frei, which means work makes you free, which was a sort of a not true sign, the least I can say, of a concentration camps. But if you notice underneath it, it's written INR. You see that INRI, Jesus Nazarenus Rex Judaeorum, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And it's the same thing. The Romans didn't mean it, just like the Nazis didn't mean it, that the work will make you free, because it didn't. Tried some sort of impressionistic works around the school at Tyler, some other kind of things from Cincinnati as I traveled. This one and the one that follows are something I used to travel on the bus between Chicago and Philadelphia when I went to school. And I just looked at the night at the, you know, at the snowy landscape, and it just kept undulating. And that's basically what I felt about it. The things are moving so fast, it was moving so almost like a needle in an oscilloscope or something. And I found it very interesting to have that kind of sensuality about the lines. This is a painting that I did when I was living in Italy. The mountains, the road, that's true. My friends pose for the picture. That's supposed to be my funeral. So I'm the one on the bottom right here looking at the audience. The village is something I've created out of imagination. And it's basically my funeral being led by this person here. So you can basically describe what the relationship was by looking at it. When I went to grad school, I started doing this kind of stuff. No, it was psychedelia time, but I did not smoke. I think I tried it a couple of times and just got paranoid. But I was painting this painting, and it was sort of, I had this dream of this kind of meteorite shower that was coming down in the black and hitting the sea and boiling. And I had those pods, which are like life-giving pods, which were sort of draining it. And as I was doing it, the janitor whom I spoke to every time, because I was working all through the night, he said to me, you know, it'd be really nice if you put the same thing on the inside of the pods as on the outside. And as soon as he spoke that, I started painting it. And he looked at me and says, you listening to a janitor? And I said, yes, I'm listening to a janitor. You have the right idea. This has nothing to do with who you are or whatever. This is the right idea to make the whole thing a little bit different. Another one of my dream landscape. This is about, I would say, 3 by 8 feet. It's not a dream about some kind of holocaust, a nuclear holocaust coming at you over the horizon, and they were coming through and destroying the eggs or something, the roe, which is sort of a life-giving thing. Actually, this also means that I used to paint very bright colors until my professor, Victor Cord, told me that, Arie, you're not using color as color. You're just using it as values of black and white. And I said, you know what? You're right. And I started using gray. That's one of the few pictures I'm going to show myself. This is when I got my Master of Fine Arts. It's totally bogus. I rented a cap and gown and got the Wisconsin Historical Society to give me their locale, and a friend took the picture. And I actually went and bought an ad in Art Forum in 1970. Some other time I'll tell you more about this story. This here is my first reflected light pieces that my paintings were getting, my landscapes were getting sort of more and more ephemeral. Now, most of you look at it will say, okay, there's 5 things, but actually this is, to me, and there's a whole series of those that I've done. I'm only going to show you one. This is like looking through a window of some kind of unique spaceship at the sunset as you're coming in there. The sun is setting to the right and going, you know, the sky is getting darker to the left. So in a landscape. Now, one day, I discovered something about reflected light. I was teaching at the School of Visual Arts, and there was a show with rather mediocre drawings in it, but they had beautifully polished aluminum frames, which cast a reflection upon the wall above the drawings. And then I said, oh my God, since my paintings were getting so more and more ephemeral, why don't I just draw with light? So a lot of experimentation went in there. I'll do it on this different kind of masterclass about that. But what you're seeing here is there's no paint on the canvas. This is a pretty large piece, and it's my homage to Monet of water lilies, but it's created by light itself, which means a reflection of the sides of the aluminum extrusion, which casts a reflection upon the white canvas, giving you. So when you look at it from this is what you see as a close-up. You notice it's a white canvas, and from the side, you can see that the side of the aluminum extrusions are painted, and by directed light, they create the thing. And this is a whole series I went of landscape, trying to figure out how far I can push the possibility of this particular medium. This here is called Indiana White. And this landscape was, again, I flew, and most of my landscape became aerial. I was always amazed that people like aisle seats in a plane. I mean, I always sit by the window. I always thought of Da Vinci was alive now, he'll probably sell his left lung to be able to sit by the window and see the landscape from 24,000 or 32,000 feet up. What you see here is a frozen river in a way that gives me sort of a formalistic aspects to it, but the white is just plain white canvas. It's not snow. And the darkness is that I painted some different colors, sort of bluish dark to a warmer dark in front, which created a deeper shadow. So really, this is just a shadow upon a totally white canvas, but it creates a 3-dimensional illusion. I'm going to go through some of them rather fast. Colorado, an imaginary flood in Illinois, the desert with planted thing. This painting really, I really like. It's sort of inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe's painting, Cloud That's Over Sky. And this painting particularly is I call it sheep clouds, because you see it like that. You see the shadows and so on, even though the field is broken up geometrically by humanity, the clouds send irregular and organic shadows. And really, it has a three-dimensional effect, although really what you see as clouds is actually the sticks that the sides were not painted at all. A Mississippi Delta, an imaginary aspect, what it would look like. This is evening clouds, and those things will repeat themselves in the history of my painting. This is like what you see when you're flying above at night, where the landscape is already dark, but the clouds still maintain a certain glow of the sun because they're so far higher up above the landscape. And then the whole series of drawings, which I have made as preparatory sketches, and they're made with oil pastels, and I switched to black and white, some terry. This is sepia ink, and this is sort of whenever I do something, I always try to do something else. When I used to paint 8-foot long or 12-foot or 20-foot long paintings, actually, I would then start working on, let's say, a piece of jewelry that was only a half an inch by an inch. So I like to keep my mind sort of occupied at different levels, not to get stuck in one form of creativity. And this is just sepia ink with some dilution. This is actually the original study for what you saw before of the clouds, of the evening clouds. This is a formalistic thing about the Archflager clouds, the white being, I don't know if you are familiar with Richard Archflager's work or his famous blip. He was a really great friend of mine for many, many years. I did this as an homage to him. And this is the color version. So I would do a black and white and a color version. This particular is a sketch for a reflected light piece. It's sort of a 5-point perspective. You know, I call it nosedive. It was an imaginary feel. How would it feel if I was nosediving straight for a landscape and being able to see almost like a fisheye in all directions of the perspective, straight down and then 4 other sides. So this is the actual sketch. What you see here is on the right of me, which is, you know, on the right of the screen, I mean, on the left of me, is the cartoon for it, of which I would then work the aluminum pieces against. And this is actual piece. This is pretty large piece based upon that sketch. And again, here using the same phenomena, changing some things, everything, my original sketches don't just change into the light versions of it. They sort of create a complete metamorphosis because it's 3-dimensional and you don't see the pigment. All the colors you're viewing right now is just reflected light of the sides. And here you sort of see the size of that particular painting. And I love also being very detail oriented. So I would switch from really broad strokes and so on in a landscape to aerial landscape, which required much more finesse and so on, using graphite sticks and so forth. Same thing here, the phenomenon of a cloud. I don't even bother drawing a cloud. It's just an outline. It's not a real cloud. It's a symbolic cloud. This is interstate. And from that came out a color version of it. And then a 4-season version of a landscape. This was inspired originally by the 4 Seasons by Vivaldi when I was listening to it. And it's basically the same kind of landscape, but always containing either 3 clouds or 3 shadows. So it'd be 3 clouds and 2 shadows, or 2 clouds and 3 shadows, and formalistic aspects on it. Within the picture yourself, you would see a cross and you also see a Star of David. First, snow. What it would look like if fields were covered with snow and the tree lines in between them and the passageways for tractors and so on. It's an abstraction, but based upon reality. And another version of it, this time with pencil. I went through a whole series of really quite abstract things flying over the American desert. So I actually would sit there with my sketchbook looking out the window and sketching interesting landscape formats, and then remembering the colors and so on. There are very, if you were to look closely at it and you have the time, there are many different colors involved to get the particular shading. And this is another companion to the same kind of piece. And another, this must have been it's again a formalistic aspect, but it's sort of a irrigation canal that must have gone through some hills or underneath some tunnel, the way it looked like it's a broken up pieces of a string. And this is a very large version of the interstate. And I am becoming fascinated at that point with the oxbows and the slinkiness and the snake-like aspects of what happens when a river runs through a flat country. So you have here organized fields of the Midwest, basically, and then the stream taking its own curve and going through the whole thing. Another version from the same series, and again, being a little bit more abstract. This is also a landscape, but it's actually a Happy New Year, Happy Rosh Hashanah card. If you looked at it here, this aspect here says Shana Tova, Shnat Osher, Shnat Shalom. Happy New Year, a year of joy and a year of peace. I remember driving to New York when this was being exhibited at the Bernice Steinbaum Gallery and telling Sarah, oh, there's so many famous artists in that particular show. They probably hung my piece in the basement. Well, I was very well surprised when I walked in. It was the first piece that would hit your eye. And thankfully, it actually was sold actually to Judith Lieberg. We'll talk about it maybe some other time. Now, this is a project which I abandoned color for about 9.5 years. This is my 14th station, Hey You Dalet suite of drawings. It dealt with aerial use, which was captured by aerial intelligence from both the Allies and the Luftwaffe. And people always imagine hell like this, which is a Hieronymus Bosch painting of hell, you know, people being tortured, and on the bottom left-hand corner here, somebody's being flayed and they're being eaten and burned and so on. And you look at this and the devils are coming in there and people are being put and burned and roasted and fires and everywhere else. But hell is not like that. To me, this was hell. This is a 4 foot by 6 foot charcoal drawing based upon aerial photograph taken by the United States Army Air Force. This is Auschwitz-Birkenau, where the main camp is here, railroad sidings and so on. I have a whole other lecture which I have prepared dealing only with this project, so I'm going to be in a certain way short. But if you go back to my original way, you know, when I was just sort of a larval state, it's still stuck deeply in my mind. And each one of those 14 pieces, you know, 14 stations obviously a reference to the Stations of the Cross, because an innocent Jew died for no sins of his own. And this is 14 stations which were railroad stations, which innocent Jews and others died for no crime of their own. And Hey You Dalet means, it's an acronym for God, please avenge their blood. This actually took me about 6 months to draw because it's 4 by 6 feet. And the frame, if you notice here on the side, is made of wrought iron and barbed wire smacked into it when it was hot and pulled out. So it's Babi Yar, Buchenwald, when you see the first bomb hitting the munition factory, this is the camp. And just as an aside, my cousin was there at that time. He was 17 years old and he was a prisoner. This is Belgium, which is the most difficult one of camps for me to draw. It took me tremendously long time and heartbreak because it's a landscape, but this white square is already where the extermination camp was, where already was bulldozed, and all this white stuff here is actually ashes of people. And this is where members of my family were gassed. This is Bergen Belzen. After the war, my wife Sarah spent time there because that turned this camp into a DP, displaced person camp. And this is the photograph taken by the RAF. And you notice in the landscape, people said to me, why did you put the skull in there? Well, I didn't. It just happens to be a clearing in Soma, and it just looks like that. This is Gross Rosen, which is not far where I used to live. I remember being on the station there and looking at the barbed wire on the train. I asked my mom, what is it? And she said, it's a horrible place. Dachau, Rogožnica, not Rogožnica, Helmno, Treblinka. I was there a few years back, and this railroad siding still stays. Mauthausen in Austria, Majdanek, near the city of Lublin, Sobibor extermination, Ravensbrück. It's amazing because the camp is right here and the city of Fürstenberg is right there. It's kind of amazing. It looked to me like Anubis looking at the camp. If you notice this color outline here, the Greek god of the underworld. And that's Stutovo on the Baltic Sea. And this shows you the size of the drawings. It took me 9.5 years to do it. And I can't tell you how thankful I am that my wife put up with all of that, because she was involved in every step on it, plus seeing me disappear every day for hours into the studio. This shows you the poems, by the way. Each one of the things was accompanied by a poem written by Jerome Rothenberg, who wrote Gematria poems, which is the meteorological poetry. And what I would do is I would do a central part of the camp, the killing ground, and then erase it and then hand letter the poems on it. When I do the whole workshop on this particular project, I'll deal with it a lot more. Came to California. Thank God Soka hired me. And I was starting to, this is actually done with the children's magic drawing pencils, which I really kind of find fun. Every artist discovers something about tools and materials, and this is a wonderful discovery. So I started working here from memory, and then my fascination of Oxbow started working, and many permutations of that. So I sort of like building up layers upon layers on my landscapes. They're all based upon aerial landscapes. And then I went into this whole suite of serpentine. I found it very wonderful to be able to imagine what does a serpentine river look like from up above. This is one of my favorites, actually hanging in my house. It's my imagination about what a serpentine river would look like seen from the plane when the moonlight is reflected on it. And as the plane changes, the different parts of the thing got illuminated. It looks like it's sort of not colorful enough, but it's about, I would say, 4 different blues and about 4 different grays, and there may be actually 5 different blues that are in time. And it's fascinating, this term. So I did a whole diptych here, and it's based upon when I was in Australia. I looked down upon this red landscape with greenish trees and a river that kept changing courses. So therefore, what happened here is that the river used to be here, but then it switched courses and it became here. And that, as a formalistic aspect, I decided to do a complete negative of it, which is on the right-hand side, the green one, which all their blue was replaced by orange, you know, and lighter yellow, and the green was replaced by, their red was replaced by green, and the green trees became red dots. You see a close-up of what those pieces really look like. I did a series called Flood, an imaginary landscape of 3 large drawings. They're about 42 inches long, of what would look if the landscape got flooded. There's oil pastels. Thank God it's in a collection of a good friend of mine. And I love this way of working because I work with many different layers. I start with maybe inexpensive oil pastels, build up a little bit heavier and so on. But again, I'm fascinated by the oxbow. Next step is here for 1911, where I did a whole series of landscapes. Some of them you'll see remembered and so on from previous images of just landscapes of the American Midwest. Some of Lake Michigan, the oxbow again interpreted the other Australian into a reflected light piece, formalistic Red River, formalistic oxbow, just total abstraction. I'm just fascinated what you can do with it, and it's all reflected light. There's not a drop of pigment on the canvas. The circles again from the crop circles that are coming through. And this one here, remember, this is one of the triptych that I did for the flood series, and I actually made a reflected light piece. I paint from the back, so therefore this whole thing was reversed when you put it actually mounted on the canvas. This is based upon actual view, except for the oxbow, obviously, actual view about flying into San Francisco. They have some kind of ponds with algae or something that's still there. So you're flying into the San Francisco airport. The ponds are incredibly colorful. That, you know, and I'm just fascinated by that because it's an abstraction of the sorts. But I drew it down as we are landing, and for the heck of it, I added the oxbow. But still, it's just fascinating to see what nature can really provide for you. This piece is a large serpentine, which goes back all the way back to my interstate picture, but this is a reflected light piece. And this is about 7 by 5 feet. This piece is called Metronome because the field looked like a metronome to me. And it's actually a piece that is right now hanging in a new science building on campus here at Soka University. It's my gift to the university. I feel very good being here. I feel that I have never experienced the kind of freedom and creativity and ability to teach as I did here. And that shows you how big the piece is. Now, I did a series of 60 graphite, and there are 20 drawings of cloud poems. And I gave myself, I finished with the color and I needed some black and white again. And this is a test to myself. Okay, these drawings I'm going to do of clouds using only powder graphite and erasers, not a pencil inside. So I did a whole series of clouds just using that and actually rubbing in powder graphite and erasing the light areas in there. So there's no highlighting with Conte or anything else. It's just simply very hard paper, rubbed in graphite and so on. I'm going to lead you through this, and you can see it through the clouds. Sometimes you'll be able to see a landscape, but it's so fascinating because as you're flying and you're looking at the landscape, at the environment that you are in at that point, 34,000 feet up, and you see the ever-changing nature of clouds and how they're driven, and they do answer some kind of physical law. And then, of course, the light changes them, and the light changes as the clouds keep moving and swirling. You notice sometimes the landscape, as you notice on the bottom center, penetrates that. And it's fascinating. So, for instance, for those lines and so on, I actually would go and sharpen my eraser into almost a razor point to be able to draw those things in. This sort of looks like Cthulhu to me. And there was a rainstorm we were flying over, and I was able to sort of capture, you can see the trails of the rain that's falling down on the landscape. By the way, Jerome Rothenberg wrote poems based upon every one of them. It's actually, if you go on my website, you'll see the whole book. You can look at the book of poems and the illustrations. Again, some landscape showing through that. The second part of the trilogy, I won't show you the third part, is 20 drawings based upon the pepper tree in Ojai, at the pepper tree retreat, where the teacher Krishnamurti got his inspiration. The tree was felled by a storm, and they actually cut most of it off and just let the trunk lying there. And instead of the trunk rotting, it sprouted 7 other trees. And I just was totally fascinated by that fact. And I kept walking around and around and around and taking many hundreds of photographs, actually. And then this series was, I decided not to use any erasers, just using different kinds of pencils, maybe about 20 different pencils, actually. And whatever I drew, that was it. And I had to, now each one of those pieces took me probably about 3 weeks, They're about the size that you see on your 21-inch screen. And this is the tree that I kept walking around and around. And I use different shades of pencils, and I also use an etching needle to create deep lines and so on into the paper, which I can put then a softer kind of a pencil on top of it. And that's how I would get those really clean, sharp, white lines out of it. It was just fascinating to me to be able to do it. And you notice in this photograph, for instance, you can see that this area here is all done with like 9H, 5H pencils, maybe 2H the most. All of this here are done with the B pencils and so forth. And it was fascinating to see. What's amazing about this series of drawing is when you start with a white piece of paper and you start putting marks, the marks make the paper look dark and soiled somehow or whatever. But by the time I get to the end, actually there's some kind of a light appears to be from it. I'm fascinated by that phenomena. And the way I draw, you just sort of watch your hand doing this. It's just, you know, I was just involved in this. It was drawing after drawing, in about 3 weeks, each one of them. This is the actual part of the root that was sticking out, looking into the canopy of the trees, the part of the broken branches. This is one probably the favorite of mine from this whole series, where you see the little peppers that are there. And the way I was able to achieve it, I tried to figure out how to do is I took my etching needle, I took the heavier part of the needle, and I indented the paper so I could get those now nice circular areas in there, and built up dark around it, and then some of the things to create some kind of illusion. They would start, for instance, a very white leaves with very soft pencil around it, and I would go with a hard pencil over that to create different shades of gray. And I just love those things as an artist. I love to be able to squeeze out, almost like what some photographers would be able to do, is like Ansel Adams, who was able to squeeze out every grain of different grayness through this. In 2014, I went back to Poland after not being there for 50 years. And when I came back, I was inspired to make this series of drawings. It's sort of multimedia kind of a drawing. It's really sort of, I don't know if it's poetic or a metaphor or whatever, but it's sort of the way I felt about returning. That's a return povrat. So this actually starts what I felt Poland was when we got back after the war. And slowly the red starts disappearing and the trees become valuable. And the red is settling down and the green appears. The green starts being more and more, and the red is settling in until it becomes a horizon. And now it becomes the Polish flag, which is white and red, and the fertile soil on the bottom. It could be just a flag, or it could be a land that's soaked with blood. So many wars went through this. And then a fire starts coming in, winds and so on, blowing away, everything is changing. This is the last one of them, which is a memory of my childhood as a child running around through fields of wheat with poppy seeds and cornflowers in there. Color enough, went back to California. I started doing a whole series of black and white drawings based upon, sort of inspired by, not necessarily taking any pictures, but it's all imaginary. My flight from here to Santa Cruz and looking down upon the landscapes and watching the different orchards, I mean. And you notice here, I just using, the bushy trees are avocados, the rounded trees are oranges. And I just tried to create a luminous feeling like sunlit. Again, this is totally for me the fascination of it is that it's a white paper that gets smudged up by black marks of a pencil and that seems to be able to be glowing. So notice that the fires, this is part of our thing, the California fire that started burning certain things. And then I actually burned the whole forest, just leaving one tree. And the shadows of the trees sort of make almost a coital kind of a linkage with the trees themselves. It's like people dancing together. And the earth is dusty shadow. And slowly, new trees are being born. And the little water enclosures around them sort of look to me like halos. And the landscape is revitalizing itself. And it's coming through. And this is the last one of that series where the orchids are again in full bloom. Now, I took some of my cartoons and some new ideas, and I started moving toward my series. So this is an abstraction of sorts of a landscape. And you'll be able to recognize on some of the places, some of the differences of things that you've seen before. Those are about, I would say, almost 4 by 6 or something, or maybe larger paintings in acrylic. Then I use sort of abstraction of the landscapes and building. You can see, again, I went back to that thing that you've seen in the past, this beautiful aspects of what happens when the clouds are lit and the landscape is dark. There's no reality in here. It's just in the fascination with clouds. This is acrylic paint. You notice that's a reversal of the field that you've seen before, landing with San Francisco. I wanted this to be opalescent. So this landscape should glow. I like to show how beautiful it really is. First snow, just as the snow came through, sometimes referring back to serpentines. And this is actually part of the last suite that I've done, or semi-last suite, is 4 seasons, going right back. Each one is a quadriptych, going right back to the original ones I showed you in the beginning of my lecture, which is that same inspiration, the 4 seasons by Vivaldi, different movements. I don't know, I'm sure there's more than 4 movements in it. I'm not a musician, but I'm really felt inspired by that particular. So I did 4 seasons, each one 4 different aspects of a particular season. So spring is borrowing some of the past of my clouds and borrowing the kind of colors that I have. That's spring 1, spring 2, 3, and 4. And the quadriptych is this big. So you're talking about about, I would say maybe 8 foot by 4 foot approximate sizing of this complete quadriptych. And then I said, well, this is spring. That's why I started. The other seasons, summer. Now, summer, again, this is based upon actually Google Maps, which I've altered and changed and whatever happens to it, but I keep using it as a source where, 1, summer 2, summer 3. I'm just fascinated by what happens to the landscape. It's almost glowing. It's almost surreal in the way its aspects of it. It's a grid. It's a formalistic grid, but yet organic in every way of applying paint and shape. And summer 4. And the quadriptych looks like that. This is what you would see when, actually I'm this fall running through next January, I'm having an exhibition here, sort of a retrospective at Founders Gallery, and those pieces will be on display. I welcome anybody who's around here to come by and see them. This is fall 1, fall 2, and I changed color schemes, which every one of them sort of, it's a harmonious kind of thing. It's attracted as a visual aspect to me to interpret certain kind of aspects of the music. And 4. And this here is the quadriptych of the fall, and now comes winter. Now the winter is based upon a friend of mine, Roberta Krumholtz, sent me a picture she took from the airplane of a winter scene. And I've divided it, I take sections of it and so forth. It's a small aspect of that. And I created a formula. People look at it first, they think it's black and white, but it isn't. I've added a lot of color in there. 1, 2. I love the interplay of darks and whites and the organic and the formalistic grids of an 8-mile square of an American landscape. 4, 3, and 4. And the triptych is like that. This is the full triptych. Having done that, I went back to Poland. And I was at this quorum with artists from Japan, Slovakia, France, Italy, Spain, and so forth. And we worked for 2 weeks intensely making paintings. And there, this is some of the sketches that I put in. This is, by the way, what I call the Arie A's chicken soup school of working, is that I throw out ideas on canvas and so forth, just like chicken soup, and then I have to skim it and find out what the real soup's supposed to taste like. So you notice I did very quick little sketches of landscape that I saw or imagined, and just to get ideas. And now those are the 2 paintings I did for the thing, which is it's just called Pola 1 and Pola 2, which means field 1 and field 2. And you see, this is the original sketch, and it became this painting. You notice how things change and metamorphose from one area to another. This is this original sketch, and this is what happened as a final painting. And when I got back to America, I was totally fascinated by it, and I did a series of 18 drawings based upon the area where my family comes from, which is Galicia, which is southeastern Poland. And those are imaginary, and sometimes using Google Maps to get some ideas about what the landscape looks like. So the fields here are completely different. The lake, the fields are different, the structure is different. In America, you have farmsteads, and then there's fields and so on. In Europe, there's usually a village, and then the fields are totally on the outside. So this is actually colored pencils, or I don't know what you call them, oil pencils. And I did a whole series of this, 18 drawings that worked itself on through the beauty of that particular landscape, which you notice is completely different, very organic, complete from the Midwest American series. The fish pond near the Dunajec, near the town of Nowy Sącz, my mother's hometown. I remember my mom telling me how they used to raise carps in it. Not they, my people did. My mom lived in the city, in a town. And it's a Dunajec River. I was just fascinated by the rolling hills and how fields have been divided. And this is what it looks like as the whole suite that's coming. It's 18 pieces, which is the Hebrew word for high, for life. And to me, it was the joy. The last one I worked on, again, I switched to Heartland, this is called Heartland Winter. I found an old photograph from someplace in the paper, looked into some old papers, and I ripped it up into 8 sections, and I decided to make drawings. So this is the first one. And in each one of the drawings, by the way, my daughter walked in and said, why don't you put the cats? Because we got 2 black kittens, put them in the drawing. So each one of the drawings has 2 kittens in it. They're right here. The rest of them, you can download the pictures from or look at them on the website and discover where the kittens are. But each one of them has actually 2 kittens in it. So this is actually a view of a certain section of Kansas. And I'm using a dark Conte pencil. I'm not going to let you have enough time to look at where the cats are right now. I'm just going to go through this. Now, this is the view how the pieces look together. It's about 7 feet tall. It takes up one wall, and they're not really in perspective. They're using perspective. They're not really matched. There's some cracks. and I actually never paid that much attention to the exactitude of the fields, but I was able to change field, change values and so on. And I went through this thing just during the latest, what can I say, pandemic, that I was forced to be at home and work. Although as an artist, it was good to be able to have the time to work. As a human being, it was pretty hard not to see my grandchildren or friends. Thank God, things hopefully is coming to be better. And after this black and white thing, I started doing a sort of a chroma, mauve, I call it, or it's a fauve kind of thing actually. So it's my first painting of a new series, which I just went bananas. This is just the beginning stage where I decided, okay, no color matters, no reality, just have fun with this sort of a jewel-like thing. So this is the last painting. I'm actually working on this particular painting right now. And if you want to see the works, you can go to my website and study them and so forth. And I'll be, thank you very much for being here. And I'm available for your questions and comments. So I'm going to switch out of here. I think I know how to do it and get on the other end. Thank you. Okay.
Arie,
Yes, I look, what happened?
hit the stop sharing, the
Oh.
red, stop share.
There it is. Thank you. All right. Are there any questions or comments?
So Arie, we do have one question coming in,
Sure.
and is from Eric.
Mhm.
Who is that? He's asking who the gorgeous woman is in the picture.
Well, that's a good, which picture you're talking about? The picture up there? Yes.
Maybe your background
Oh,
when
that
you
one.
stopped sharing your background on your after your presentation.
Oh, okay. You were there? The woman who's here sitting next to me is Sarah, my wife.
If anyone in the audience wants to ask a question, you can raise your hand or you can submit a question through the chat. See, it looks like Eugene has a question for you, so I'm going to unmute him.
So Arie, I recall in your living room, you had a picture of a man, I don't know if it was your father, with a Jewish symbol over in the middle of the forehead. I forgot, was it Willem or something?
Yeah.
So who was that? Was that, and you didn't show the picture now.
No, those, this is not the, if I were to show every work of art that I've done, it would be taking you probably would have to bring your pajamas and a nice pillow and maybe a teddy bear so you can get it.
Yeah, but this is like 1964.
Yes, it was a 63. Yes, there was a painting of my father. I started it on Friday afternoon and I didn't sleep and I finished it on Sunday night and I brought it to school. It's a large picture too. I did on my, it's called Morning Prayer, and it will be, I will include that, but in another talk. It's not in this particular one.
Okay, well, it was a fascinating show, and thanks for letting us ask questions.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you.
And we have another question from Harvey Segal.
Okay.
Hello, my brother. How are you?
Nice to see you.
The reflected light paintings always fascinate me. And I wonder if you can show any more detail that illustrates the plain canvas, but how each of the strips are painted and how the light acts upon them.
Well, actually, if you go to my website, which is thank you for the for the suggestion, Harvey. You go to my website, or you go actually go to YouTube. You go type in Arie Gallus, you know, on YouTube, and then you'll see a whole video how I make it from the beginning to the end. It actually explains all of it, so people can actually view it on that particular channel. Or you can go to my website, and there's a link there also for that. Again, this hopefully going to be another talk, which is total details and so on, how the whole evolution of it happened. This is sort of an encompassing view I took in this particular lecture. You know, thanks very much for bringing it up. But anybody who's interested, you can just click on that, and you will be able to see, you know, basically how it's done. Okay, and you know, any other questions, please?
Good to see you.
Take care. Anybody?
Somebody is asking, Mike Ford, I loved your early pictures. Where are they now?
Well, my early pictures, some of them my mom saved, which are, I mean, talking early pictures. That's part of the reason I have it here, because, you know, instead of putting them on the refrigerator, she's somehow stored it. But my early pictures, thankfully, a lot of them have been purchased. Some of them are still available. But, you know, as an artist, you don't want to have the biggest collection of your own work. You know, they'll sit there at night, put them in the closet, you know, sit there with a flashlight and look at them. You like people to have them, to people to view them. So that's, you know, thankfully, I was able to spend a lifetime being and doing what I love to do. You know, being an artist, creating works, you know, and actually surviving as an artist and as an educator. You know, so they're available to view on the internet and so forth. I mean, this is what happens when I had to select the works for this particular topic of my lecture, is that there's so much stuff. And the point is, I don't know how many people can stay awake that long to be able to listen to this.
We have another question from, I think, Bella Gustein.
Mm-hmm.
Bella, did you have a question? Let me see if I can unmute you.
I see Celia.
I just want to thank you for letting us to see your beautiful collection of your own work. And I'm hoping you remember about 10 years ago, we did program together with the music and your 14 stations in Naples, Florida. And was a poetry and music and your amazing work. Cannot forget that. And actually people asking all around if you're planning to do another presentation of your 14 stations, so maybe we can expand our first program and do it again.
I would love to do it. I'm officially an artist in residence and retired. Actually, my new studio is here that my wife and I worked, and some student helped to set up my studio. And if you go to the outside of the door, it says artist in basement residence, you know, which is exactly that at the university here. It's an honor, by the way. But no, all of those can be arranged, and we can communicate about that thing. So certainly would love to do that, you know.
It was done at Edison College, if you remember. It was a very big program. And we have other venues since that time. And in other venue, actually, we can do it the same way as we do it today. We can do it, we can replant it and do it on the Zoom for people interested all over the world, because people do need to see your works, especially accompanying, but you know, the poetry you've been provided and your beautiful presence and the music we can provide it. So looking forward to that.
Okay, same here.
Thank you for incredible variety. And as a musician, I can just tell you that your work full of music. Very musical.
Thank you very much.
Very musical. Thank you, Arie. Thank you so much.
Totally welcome.
And we have another question from Celia Rocha.
Rocha.
Hi, Arie. Thank you for sharing your work with us. I am really amazed by your pepper tree series. And I wanted to ask you if you could share a little more about the technique that you use to make those drawings.
Yes, I can certainly do that. That technique, first of all, requires patience and knowledge that there's not one pencil. There's so many different pencils, okay? So I start with usually maybe 12 pencils to 20 pencils, depending what. Some different manufacturers, even the same number, right? And then each pencil has a range of grays that I can put in depending upon what the pressure is, okay? So the way I work is I start drawing the upper left-hand corner, simply because I'm right-handed. And as I keep drawing from that, I don't smudge the work, okay? And what I do is for very complex things that need to have very thin lines and white lines and so on, I actually, in a way, push into the paper with my etching needle. So I actually use an etching needle to create a sort of an invisible lines that later appear, almost like if you remember when you were a kid, maybe you were rubbing a penny or something, or rubbing a coin on a piece of paper, the same basic principle to that. And what happens is that if you're painting something with a very soft pencil, very dark pencil, it doesn't penetrate the grain of the paper and leaves white dots. So therefore you have still many different harder pencils that you can use overlay on certain sections on it, which will darken the white dots into different shades of gray, creating a real incredible ambience of color. So what I do is I work on section after section after section and try to guess how the other section is going to look like, but trying to find within that little section a sort of a microcosm of relations between light and dark, you know, and just keep the pencil sharp and my hands clean. Just keep washing your hands. I almost feel like a Torah scribe, you know, where after every few lines you have to wash your hands and so on. And the technique is in a certain way simple, but in a certain way it depends sort of thinking in your, you know, on your feet literally, or thinking of with your hands. And I know your work and so on, so I know how you're drawing and how wonderful your work is. And you know, you watch your hands do the work in a certain level, you know, that's beyond explanation. You know, your eyes are seeing it, and somehow that connection with your eye and making the muscles of your fingers do it, and you feel the pressure inside your heart, you feel the pressure of your hand against the paper and the pencil, the hardness. You know, the soft pencils move quickly, this hard pencils move slowly. It's a whole, it's like a symphony of coordination that's involved in it. And basically, that's my technique. You know, one thing I did, and I do when I taught, and I taught for 50 years, is anything that I would know of how to do, I would try to tell my students, you know, don't try to keep any secrets, you know. Oh, and if you like that kind of work, it's an incredible compliment to a teacher to do that. And it's, to me, it's just wonderful to see the drawing grow from day to day, from, as I said, from a blank paper that's getting smudged with some pencils to the end of a piece of paper that looks like a glowing image. Question.
Thank you.
Okay, Arie, I'm going to take one from the chat, and this is from Kanagawa. He says, I'm very impressed with the diversity of mediums and themes from the fields to the extreme detail of the pencil tree drawings. What would you say appeals to you personally about the formalistic, grids on the fields and the creativity that you can exhibit with that framework?
Well, whether we know it or we don't know it, there's a certain formalism to almost anything else in our existence. You know, there are certain streets, you're riding on the right-hand side, at least here. I tried riding on the right-hand side in Australia, that didn't work. You're just going the wrong way. No, every artwork is actually formalistic in its own aspect, because you're not dealing with real fields, you're not dealing with lights, you're not dealing with anything. You're dealing with a piece of paper, you know, and you're making marks on it. You know, your hand is doing that. You know, sometimes that structure, but you put on purpose, although humanity did this on certain fields, when you put that structure on, it confines you to certain things, but in a certain way, it allows you freedom to work within that confinement. And there's so many permutations. I just watched yesterday the program on the history of jazz, you know, different jazz players playing and so on. I'm fascinated by it. Is to watch somebody take an instrument, you know, and create a feeling through it, just channeled to their fingers, to their breath, to create tonalities and so on. Yes, there's a certain scale. There's only that many notes that are existent, right? But within that, you can do so many different things. So therefore, you can have, you know, Coltrane, or you can have Bach, or Beethoven, or Shostakovich, or anybody else. So the grid, the formalistic aspect of it is something that I accept as it is. And to me, certain aspects of nature, which is, there is a certain way a cloud is formed. There's a certain way a flower grows. There's a certain way that your hair are growing on your hair. You know, there's a certain kind of a spiral that's happening in a certain way a shell of a snail grows, you know. So this, all you can call it formalistic, but within each one of them, there's such a myriad of things that it would probably take me many, many lifetimes to you know, explore it all. Thank you for your question.
And then we have Arie Marshall A.
Hello. Hey, Arie. Tari from FDU. Hello, Sarah. How are you? So pleased to see you after all these years, and so happy to see the latest work since you've been back to Poland. And my question to you is, how do you feel when people attribute a totally different meaning to work that you did decades or generations ago, but it satisfies completely an emotion of present day?
I feel that it's like in any kind of conversation, you know, between, you know, people, or two people, or entities, is that conversations are remembered differently, but yet the same conversation is remembered by other people within their own context. And you change, I change, you know. You all know that not a single cell in my body is the same cell that I was born with, okay? And so I feel very, very interested that each, actually, I think it's kind of good that each, I wouldn't say generation, that I don't know about generations, although I'm pretty old coot at this point. But you know, you interpret certain things, but you can identify with it. It means that you can identify with how your baby looks at you, you know, and then that same baby is now 14 years old, and how that person looks at you, and then that person is married or has their babies, and how they look at you. It's still the same person, but in different contexts. So I'm really very, very happy that people can contextualize the works and look at them. That means that something, I did something in that period of time, but I didn't do it to be temporal like that. I mean, music is like that. That, you know, you hear it now, you can record it, and still after listening it, you can start it again. But it's a thing that's going. But in my art, there are artists doing all kinds of other works, not like, you know, I don't mean the same thing, but you can be conceptual, you can be anything. But for me, the thing is that after I finish work, I have a piece. I remember people saying to me, how can you part with your work that you spend so much time and so forth? Well, very easily. Not because I don't like it, because I really gave part of it, but you know, I need to live, I need to support myself, I need to other things, and I cannot walk into a meat store and go to the butcher saying, look, I have a great sense of humor, I'm in good health, and I look terrific, give me some meat. No, he wants money. So somebody should be able to go and you know, people always ask me too another question similar, like what kind of art should I buy? You know, I mean, first of all, I can tell them buy mine, but that's another story. But at the other time, I can say, you can buy the art that you like. Don't listen to anybody. If you like it, you buy it. That's all. If you have the money, you feel the will, and you want it, take it. You know, so then contextualization of the art, where I'm glad that some people can see over the ages how it changes and how you sometimes revert to certain things that you've done before.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
to see you.
Same here, Harry.
And we have Charlene. I can't see her last name, I'm sorry. Charlene Gelber.
I don't think anybody has what I have, Aria. Hi there, love to you and Sarah. I have an aluminum stick, one of many that he's used on his paintings. And the backside that gets attached to the canvas is painted white. And the other three sides are colors. And that's how they get reflected onto the campus. And this one is called the first ever Gelber single super rainbow stick from 1981. I just spent the last 10 minutes of your chat here trying to find it. I put it away so it would be forever. And I found it. Aria, you remember it?
Yes, I do. Oh my God. Yeah.
It's actually one of the six that he's used on all of these paintings, right?
Yes, it's one of the aluminum extrusions.
White, painted white, and even some of the white is coming off. I see the aluminum. And then we've got all the other paints, the colors.
Thank you. Oh, wow. That's a blast from the past. It's thank you, Charlene. It's just you know,
love you guys.
It's amazing, you know. And I said in the future, one of those classes I'm going to presentations, I'm going to actually do that and show people how the things were extruded and how, you know, I had to learn a whole way of I almost killed myself with the fumes in the beginning. You know, I couldn't walk. I literally at age 41 couldn't walk up a flight of stairs because I was using lacquer paints. And thankfully, I was smart of the doctors in a way because they were giving me different medicine. And I figured out it doesn't work. But you know, you had to learn the whole science. I'll deal with that at another class. Hopefully, I'll do the whole process from.
But I haven't gotten sick from this, so it's been good.
Okay. Thank you.
And do we have Lisa German? Do you have a question?
Mm-hmm.
Let me try and spotlight her. Here, let me unmute you.
You're getting
Yeah, she'll do it.
Yeah, I have the same thing. I have a whole bunch of those sticks and they're hanging on my wall and they're beautiful. It's funny. And I have some other really old paintings too, some huge paintings.
Yes, let's just say that. There's going to be another talk about those.
Yeah. Anyhow, yeah, but they're a nice memory. Every time I'm walking by them, yeah, they're.
Well, you know, the person speaking is a friend of mine, and
he was the best man at my wedding.
That's
a very close friend of my husband's. The first person my husband ever met when he came to the United States from Israel.
Yes, that is true. I was sort of the official welcoming society for the von Steuben people because I speak a few languages. So no matter what, even if the language that I could have no idea, they would send the kids to me. So you talk to them. You somehow figure out what language. And Harry has been a great friend and was a wonderful human being. And also through the years, whenever I was on really difficult times and I needed help, he always would buy a piece, which I was always grateful for that, you know, as opposed to some people saying, hey, Arie, why don't you paint me a painting, you know, for the living room? And I said, hey, you're an electrician, why don't you wire my house? Oh, I can't do that, it's my job. I said, well, this is my job. Thank you very much, Liz. Thank you.
Well, you said, I said to you one time, if I ever move out of my big house, what am I going to do with these huge paintings? I won't have room for them. And you said, oh, well, I hope I'm famous by then, really famous, and you get a lot of money and you sell them.
Well,
so
God, you're
maybe,
listening.
Maybe,
no.
So that may happen.
Right. Thank you.
And then we have a question from Caitlin Grundy.
Sure.
Hi, I'm currently a student at Soka and I'm taking a drawing class with Anne. And so we've been doing a lot of work with pencils and sketches and techniques. And so I was really kind of fascinated by your pencil works, especially your clouds with the graphite powder and only the erasers.
Mhm.
And I was just kind of wondering if you had any tips, anything to say about working with an eraser, because I have been discovering how difficult it is to, like, erase what you want to erase and erase cleanly and that kind of thing. So I just thought your pieces with that were incredible.
Well, thank you. I can give you some of the clues. Well, it all depends. It's all it all depends on what paper you use and so on. I use a few different erasers, and the erasers from the soft eraser to my pink pearl's my favorite one, and there's also an eraser which is like a pink pearl, which has some kind of volcanic ash in it. And you can never erase everything, so don't even think about it. Use the eraser as a tool of drawing as opposed to using it as erasing something that's a mistake. Make mistakes with the eraser rather than erasing mistakes you make with the pencil. Thanks.
I have a question over email that was submitted, and it's from, actually, well, no, she's already spoken. It was from Tari Marshall Day, so sorry about that. Anybody else have questions?
Well, there's no.
Karen, I think Zelda Zelda has a question. Pronounce your I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
Zelda F. Fuchsman?
Yes.
Okay, Zelda, you may ask your question.
She's still muted, Karen, I'm afraid.
Unmute her.
Yeah, I'm asking her. Oh, there she goes.
I see her.
Is that good now?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, Arie, you know how much we love you. He's my brother-in-law, and he's the shining star in our family. And of course, all this art is unbelievable. The first time that we met Arie, he was doing the little aluminum sticks. And what was so unusual that you didn't mention, Arie, is yes, they're painted on three sides and they reflect on the canvas, but they move along with you as you walk. It changes. And this is what's so amazing about those little aluminum sticks. And I just wanted to share it with the audience, how very important. It's just not little sticks on the canvas. It's movable, it's alive. And we're proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Zara. Thank you very, very much. Proud of you.
Thank you. You can mute me now.
Okay.
Anybody else with questions?
Well, nobody wants to hear my rendition of Danny Boy, do you? No.
I think we have one more, Judy Fitzpatrick. Let me see if I can find you. Judy, you want to mute yourself?
Okay.
There you go.
Arie, I just took this down off my wall.
Oh.
Do you remember this?
Yes, of course. You and John, of course.
I've had it in my hallway for so many years, and I think of you every time I look at it.
This is in Hyannisport right now.
I'm in Cape Cod. I'm in Marston's Mills in Cape Cod. Yes.
Wow. Yes, I remember. Oh my God. Oh.
I love it. It's one of my favorite things.
Thank you, Judy.
And this was a wonderful lecture, and I'm so glad you did it. And I've never seen any of those the early work that you showed. I don't think I ever actually saw any of that.
No, actually, I didn't have any room to display them. I had them stored in, in folders and so forth.
When I pass your house in Madison, I think of all those times that we hung out together, and when you were working on the stations during that period.
Oh, my dear friends, I remember everything. And,
yeah.
You're also in the legend in our minds. You and John both.
Right.
Your friendships and the closeness and the famous. You're not. That's a real Irishman thing.
No, this was so wonderful. I mean, to see so much of your work, it's just really impressive. And
thank you.
You're still doing it.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. I will talk, I hope, soon.
Yes, we will. Take care. Thank you.
We have Ginny Smith.
Okay.
Let's just unmute. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, hi. I don't think I raised my hand, but I would just like to say how fascinating your body of work is. Arie, it's great to see you and to see so much of your beautiful accomplishments and inventory. Wow. I was there for many parts of it, but to go as far back as you have, and the depth and the breadth of it is incredible.
Well, thank you very much. And the person sitting right next to you, who I happen to know quite well over many years, Keith, also a fantastic artist, and somebody who works from the depth of the soul all the time, both as a visual artist and as a writer. So it's great to see your faces again, Jenny and Keith. Really
good to be here. Let's do more of these. You're really fascinating to watch. I loved it very much. Love you guys, you and Sarah.
Same here. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Eve Klein.
Hello. Hello, Aria. Can you hear me? This is your favorite Canadian sister-in-law.
Yes. Well, yes. I'm your favorite brother-in-law in California, right?
Thank you so much. That was just wonderful. Sam and I enjoyed it. Sam, come here, say hello.
I'm here.
Sam and I enjoyed it very much. Beautiful work, beautiful. And the lecture was just incredible. And we cannot wait to see you in person and to see your work and everything. So thank you. We loved it.
Thank you for being here. That's my mishpucha, folks. It's my family.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Thank you. I see Tom Miller sitting there quietly. Are there any questions more or so on? If not,
When are you coming back, Arie?
Well, when Jersey warms up a little bit, those old bones, so on. My friend Don complained today that after the second one of his doses of vaccines, his bones ache. And I told him, hey, what do you think? I'm 76. I wake up every morning like that. So, it's just good to see your face. Thank you.
Well,
another good artist, another great artist from New Jersey. And again, thanks for your service.
Thank you, Arie.
Semper Fi. Okay.
I think we're good, Arie.
Okay. So thank you again for everything. And I look forward to seeing some of you again. And then please, if you have things, go to my website, www.ariegallis.com. You can look at stuff leisure. There's a whole area there of some of the films and so on, and also on YouTube. Plus, you can see my famous film about saying farewell to FDU, where I'm dancing in the pink tutu. So hopefully some of you will take a look at that picture. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye, guys.